Have you ever stopped to think that true prosperity doesn't begin in your bank account, but within your mind and spirit, and that the wealth you manifest in the external world is merely a reflection of the quiet abundance you carry inside? Many people confuse prosperity with ostentation, believing that being prosperous means proving something to others, flaunting achievements, or displaying power. But divine prosperity doesn't need to announce itself. It doesn't shout to be noticed. It establishes itself calmly, deeply, and unshakably. There are people who, even when facing humiliations, rejections, or financial crises, remain serene because they know their source isn't in people or the market, but in God, who owns the gold and the silver. This conviction gives them a strength that no circumstance can shake. Neuroscience confirms that when we regulate our emotions, when we choose to respond with awareness instead of reacting in despair, our brain activates areas linked to clarity, decision-making, and resilience. This skill is crucial for financial prosperity. Have you noticed that many people try to show confidence through arrogance, spending more than they have, showcasing achievements that aren't even real? But behind this lies insecurity and fear. Because when your wealth depends on external validation, you become a slave to others' opinions. True prosperity is quiet. It doesn't need to prove anything or compete with anyone because it understands that divine abundance is infinite, and there's always room for everyone to prosper. When you grasp this, you stop wasting energy trying to impress and start using it to grow authentically. The Bible teaches that a man who trusts in the Lord is like a tree planted by the waters, unafraid of heat, bearing fruit even in a year of drought. This metaphor perfectly captures the silent confidence that generates lasting prosperity. When you know your source is inexhaustible, you don't need to react with desperation in a crisis. You can breathe, analyze, listen, learn, and move forward because your mind isn't trapped by fear, but open to the opportunities hidden even in problems. Divine prosperity is built on an internal locus of control. The conviction that your choices, faith, and discipline carry more weight in your outcomes than external circumstances. This is the key that distinguishes those who build solid wealth from those who live at the mercy of luck. Those who believe everything depends solely on external factors remain trapped by fear. But those who take responsibility for their choices understand they can shape their lives and attract wealth through mindset, action, and faith in God. Epictetus said that it's not events that disturb us, but our interpretation of them. The Bible confirms that as a man thinks in his heart, so is he. If you see yourself as limited, you'll live a limited life. But if you see yourself as an heir to divine abundance, you'll experience prosperity even where others see scarcity. Here's a powerful secret. Prosperity isn't the absence of mistakes. It's the ability to learn quickly, to recognize when something didn't work and redirect with wisdom. Those who aren't afraid to admit failures grow faster and find solutions others overlook. Many believe admitting mistakes is weakness, but in divine prosperity, it's strength. It shows humility and flexibility, two essential ingredients for those who want to be used by God to prosper without losing their essence. Psychology calls this a growth mindset, but faith calls it the renewal of the mind. It's when you understand that every failure isn't an end, but a lesson, a step closer to your purpose. Lasting prosperity is built by those who aren't afraid to start over, who don't cling to pride but rely on the truth that all things work together for the good of those who love God and trust in His purpose. What is prosperity if not the ability to flourish in any season, to turn criticism into fuel, to take every no from life and transform it into learning that opens bigger doors than you imagined? Neuroscience shows that the human brain creates new connections whenever we face challenges. Spiritually, this means every crisis is also an opportunity for expansion, because God doesn't waste pain. He always transforms it into growth. Truly prosperous people don't live trying to be the center of attention. They don't need to compete to prove their worth because they already know who. They are in God. They understand their identity doesn't depend on applause, but on a deep root planted in the source of life. This calm presence, this inner certainty, attracts opportunities, people, and resources. When you don't radiate desperation, you radiate confidence, and confidence is the greatest capital anyone can carry. Carl Jung spoke about the difference between the mask and the authentic self. In prosperity, this is clear. The mask is pretending to have wealth without it, but the authentic self is building wealth steadily, even silently, until the results speak for themselves. If you want divine and financial prosperity, start today by cultivating inner silence, mental discipline, humility to learn, and unshakable faith. This combination creates roots that sustain your life through any storm. And remember, prosperity isn't a race to see who gets there first. It's a marathon of consistency, faith, and action. A daily journey where every choice, thought, and attitude aligns with the certainty that you are a child of an abundant God. Here's the translation into English. Have you ever stopped to reflect that one of the greatest barriers to your prosperity isn't a lack of opportunities, but the invisible prison of living to impress others and constantly seeking their approval? Many people never experience true abundance because they are held captive by a social persona, trying to appear successful instead of building real success, obsessed with fitting into standards that never lead to lasting wealth. Divine prosperity doesn't stem from performance, but from authenticity. When you understand who you are in God, you no longer need to waste mental energy proving your worth to others. You already carry the certainty that you are a child of the owner of all riches. Living in pursuit of acceptance is like trying to hold water in your hands. It keeps slipping away, always demanding effort, draining the energy you could be using to create, grow, invest, and prosper. Neuroscience shows that our brain spends up to 40% of its daily energy trying to predict what others think of us. But when you silence that noise and realize your prosperity doesn't depend on human opinion, but on divine approval, you free up immense mental resources to produce real fruit. The authentic self is infinitely more magnetic than a created persona. People may not be able to explain it, but they sense when someone is genuine. The presence of someone living in truth builds trust, and trust is the foundation of any solid financial relationship. The Bible teaches that the blessing of the Lord brings wealth without adding sorrow. This means true prosperity doesn't require masks. Those who prosper in God's presence don't need to uphold a false image. Their fruit speaks for itself. When you live trying to impress, you spend too much energy monitoring your performance, leaving little room to create real wealth. But when you accept yourself as you are and understand your worth in God, you free up energy to build businesses, invest wisely, and multiply talents. Divine prosperity begins when you turn off that internal monitor constantly demanding perfection. Only when you stop trying to please everyone can you focus on what truly generates abundance: clear vision, steadfast faith, and consistent action. The paradox is that when you stop trying to be accepted, when you free yourself from the obsession with appearing confident, you naturally exude security and attract the right people. Those who don't need to prove anything end up achieving everything. Here's a hard truth. Some people won't like you. Some will criticize you. Others will reject you. But prosperity requires the courage to be misunderstood. There's no wealth without risks, no harvest without planting seeds that many don't believe will bear fruit. Ignaz Semmelweis died ridiculed, but his ideas saved millions of lives. This shows that often, the wealth and divine vision within you will be rejected at first. But if you remain faithful to what God has given you sooner or later, the fruit will appear and change generations. Prosperity demands integrity because it's pointless to gain the world and lose your soul. It's futile to bow to temporary applause and lose eternal blessing. So, if you must choose, always choose authenticity, even if it costs rejection in the beginning. Nietzsche spoke of free spirits, those who thought beyond social pressures. Spiritually, this is being someone guided by the Holy Spirit, who doesn't bow to the fear of being different, but stands firm in the truth that generates real abundance. Every important truth goes through 3 stages. First, it's ridiculed, then it's opposed. Finally, it's accepted as obvious. The same applies to your prosperity. At first, people will laugh at your dreams, then criticize your choices, but in the end, no one will be able to deny the fruit God produces in your life. When you realize you can't be everything to everyone, you learn to be exactly what God called you to be. This clarity attracts prosperity because you stop living to please and start living to bear fruit. The greatest trap is believing that confidence and prosperity can be forged with superficial techniques, canned phrases, or the appearance of wealth. That's not prosperity, it's anxiety disguised as security. Divine prosperity isn't built on masks, but on deep roots. It's not what you appear to be that determines your wealth. It's who you are in silence, how faithful you remain behind the scenes before the harvest becomes visible. Just as water doesn't try to flow, it simply flows. And trees don't try to grow. They simply grow. Prosperity doesn't need to be forced. It happens naturally when you remove the layers of fear, ego, and approval that suffocate your true essence. If you want to truly prosper, don't waste energy building an image of success. Spend your energy removing what keeps you from being authentic. Genuine prosperity is the result of who you are, not who you pretend to be. Here's the translation into English. Pause for a moment and ask yourself, how many times in your life have you spent energy trying to impress, please, or seek approval, only to realize that the emptiness inside remained? The compulsive pursuit of acceptance isn't just exhausting. It's a silent poison that steals your authenticity and with it, blocks the prosperity God wants to pour into your life. When you live trying to shield yourself from discomfort, dodging judgment, or hiding who you truly are, you become a prisoner in an invisible cage, a mental prison that prevents abundance from flowing. But here's the good news. There's a path to freedom. When you stop trying to impress, something extraordinary happens. The energy once drained to maintain a facade is redirected to building real wealth. Being yourself, without apologies, without masks, without performance, is the essence of true strength and true prosperity. Prosperity isn't about living to be special in human eyes. It's about embracing your humanity before God, recognizing that you don't need to be extraordinary to be blessed because the blessing already rests upon you. What blocks your abundance isn't a lack of opportunities, it's the social conditioning that taught you to believe you need external approval to feel worthy of prospering. Here's the key. There are simple yet powerful practices that can dissolve decades of conditioning and unleash the river of divine prosperity always within you. First practice. Become a silent observer of your own life, like an anthropologist studying a rare and valuable human being, which, in this case, is you. When you feel the urge to impress, simply acknowledge it without judgment. Say to yourself, interesting. Here's my need for approval trying to control my choices. When you change your opinion just to avoid conflict, make a mental note. Look, here's my fear of rejection trying to steal my prosperity. This awareness is liberating because when you observe rather than be controlled, you begin to reclaim control over your financial and spiritual life. Second practice. Experiment with small acts of authenticity. Share a simple truth about yourself that you'd normally hide without fear, as if to say, this is who I am and that's okay. It might be an unusual taste, a unique perspective, or even a desire to pursue a financial path others don't. Understand, but that you feel is your divine direction. By embracing small truths, you discover the world doesn't end when you're real. On the contrary, doors to genuine connection open, and the right people start to draw near. Third practice. Practice selective indifference. Identify 3 opinions that overly influence your choices, and for 30 days consciously ignore them, not out of rebellion, but out of freedom. Wear clothes that reflect your identity, not what others expect. Invest your money in something you believe in, not what seems impressive. Make choices based on your values, not external pressure. These practices aren't just exercises, they're training to reprogram your nervous system to find internal stability instead of relying on external validation. It's like opening the floodgates of a dammed river. When you free yourself from the need to please, prosperity flows naturally. But beware, your mind will resist. It will make excuses, say it's too risky, that you're being selfish or reckless, because it's been trained to seek approval at all costs. This resistance isn't a sign of error, it's a sign you're on the right path. Prosperity requires the courage to break old patterns. If you stay committed for 30 days, something profound will shift. You'll realize you've always had a choice, always had power, always been free to prosper. True confidence isn't about never feeling fear, but acting despite it. Faith isn't the absence of uncertainty. It's the decision to believe God's abundance is greater than any doubt. Culture tries to sell confidence as invincibility, but divine prosperity doesn't come from appearing strong. It comes from the courage to be vulnerable, human, and authentic before God and others. The most prosperous person isn't the one who never fails, but the one who rises every time, learning, growing, and multiplying talents without giving up. Embracing your humanity is also embracing your divine inheritance. There's no contradiction between being imperfect and being a child of the Creator, and it's in this union that true abundance flourishes. When you stop chasing superficial confidence and choose radical self-acceptance, you discover that the freedom to be yourself is worth more than any fleeting approval. Being real is infinitely more powerful than trying to seem confident. Those who are authentic naturally radiate confidence, attracting resources, partners, opportunities, and open doors. Divine prosperity doesn't manifest in those who pretend perfection, but in those who have the courage to live their truth. True leadership doesn't come from appearing invincible, but from showing courageous humanity. When you allow yourself to be real, you give others permission to be real too. And it's this authenticity that creates deep connections, solid businesses, and relationships that multiply abundance. In the end, the question isn't, how can I be more confident? It's, how can I be more real, more honest, more connected to the divine source of prosperity? Perhaps true strength isn't in never falling, but in always rising, knowing God's hand is with you. And maybe, just maybe, when you stop trying to be special in the world's eyes and accept that you're a beloved child of God, you discover you already carry everything you need to prosper. The confidence you seek isn't in a better version of yourself, but in the radical acceptance of who God already says you are, blessed, loved, and destined for abundance.